a minute or two past 11, so I'll go ahead and get things started as our audience continues to trickle in. Welcome. Thanks everybody for making time. My name is Matt Moak with High Street Net Lease Group, and I am the president of the Houston Gulf Coast CCIM chapter for 2020. Normally we would be meeting at a in-person lunch event, but our speakers for today have thankfully agreed to present virtually, which is awesome. We've got three great speakers in Mary, Carlos, and Heather to talk about CannaBusiness, cannabis policy, how they relate to real estate, which I know very little about, so I'm very excited to hear what they have to say. And it's going to be a panel-like discussion with Mary leading the panel as moderator. So everyone in the audience, you guys are muted. You can't be seen, but if you have questions or comments, please post them in the chat section, and I'll kind of sneak off into the background here once things get rolling and keep track of those. And I know Mary will as well. So without further ado, I'm going to just give a brief bio and intro for each of our speakers, and then we'll move forward. I'll start with Mary Olivar, who's our moderator. She's a director at Greenbelt Capital. Mary's been using her knowledge to support the cannabis industry as an advisor, consultant, and advocate since 2014. She has over 25 years of experience in the natural foods industry. She was a global healthy eating coordinator for Whole Foods Market, where she managed complex collaborations, launched innovative market initiatives, and exhibited a keen sense of emerging trends and consumer preferences and patterns. And as a partner of OM Greens, Mary sourced and evaluated numerous investment opportunities, delivered investors valuable counsel and education on multifaceted legal cannabis opportunities. So thanks, Mary. And we have Carlos Martinez, who's a managing partner at Greenbelt Capital. Carlos is an experienced investor and real estate developer, manager, and strategic advisor with a primary focus on alternative investments and real estate. In 2014, Carlos shifted his focus from the Texas real estate market to the emerging opportunities in the rapidly growing legal cannabis industry. Carlos has also been featured speaker on cannabis investment opportunities at the Texas Marijuana Policy Conference and the Austin Cannabis Entrepreneurs Conference. Additionally, he serves on the South by Southwest Advisory Board for CannaBusiness and Cultural and Connection Tracks. Heather Fazio is director for Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. She served as an executive director of Texans for Accountable Government from 2011 to 2014, where her primary priorities were privacy rights and civil liberties, including marijuana law reform. In 2014, Heather began working for the Marijuana Policy Project and built an advocacy-focused coalition, Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. So thank you guys for making time to be here, and I'm going to turn things over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Matt. It's our pleasure to be able to share more with this group. So I'd like to start with pulling the lens back a little bit and talking about the state of the industry and looking at the overall landscape of what's happening in cannabis across the nation and what kind of opportunities there are. So Carlos, I was hoping you could give us an overview of what cannabis across the US looks like.
Thanks, Mary, and thank you all for having me here today. I'm Carlos Martinez, and I have been an advocate for cannabis legalization for about 6 years now. I came by a dear friend of mine got sick, and I saw the power that this medicine had to heal and reduce pain in terminally ill cancer patients, and I really, it changed my life. I left the cannabis industry to I went into the cannabis industry to find out all I could about this healing medicine, and so I left my real estate career, and then I started investing in these companies that were making huge differences in people's lives and changing the quality of their care. And so I really saw cannabis as a healing medicine first off, and that's where my advocacy and desire to see these laws change stems from. Even though I have a real estate background, I've been practicing real estate for 20 years in Texas, I really felt like bringing money into cannabis 6 years ago was of utmost importance. It was just a small industry struggling to survive. So I began picking companies that I believed in and raising money for them, and always with my eye on the real estate opportunity. But seeing this mishmash of regulatory systems across the states, I realized how hampered this industry was. So initially, there were so many difficulties that are still yet to be worked out today. There's a certain amount of I feel like just a big push for government to over-regulate this industry. And I've seen across states and federally how difficult these entrepreneurs have had it to survive. And I'm super proud to be in this industry and see the amount of hard work and regulatory compliance and willingness to be a legal industry in an environment that's really, really, I feel, taking advantage of these entrepreneurs at this time. So I think on a national basis, we have a real patchwork of different regulatory features that there's no real economies of scale across the state. So you can't use medicine from one state and cross it to the other. You're hampered by really, I mean, each state has its own scheme of how they do things, and basically how that success in that state is defined is really even down to the municipality of that region. So it's a very difficult patchwork map right now on a national scale, and I'm really proud of the entrepreneurs. There's close to 300,000 people in the industry now, that compared to the coal industry, which has about 50,000 people, and that's with no federal help. Being illegal, we don't have access to any banking. Banking relationships are also patchwork. We don't have access to even being able to write off any of the expenses that these entrepreneurs have. A 280E law disallows them that ability. So, they're out there building this industry with two hands tied behind their back. Real estate, though, in cannabis doesn't have those limitations. So honestly, right now, real estate is on a national basis pretty much one of the only profit-making opportunities in cannabis. And so we're seeing these large real estate investment trusts coming in and backing these entrepreneurs through one of my favorite vehicles is a sales leaseback. So I've been focusing with my fund on helping cannabis entrepreneurs that have real estate be able to lease it back and use that money to grow their business. So that's one of the few ways besides private equity investment that money's coming into the industry. So right now, Mary, I'd say there's quite a mismatch of opportunities out there, but I do see a strong opportunity presenting itself now with the situation that we're in as COVID is hampering these economies statewide and nationally. I think more lawmakers are going to keep an open eye and ear and a decision to legalize cannabis, I think, in a relatively short time.
Thank you. I appreciate your commitment to helping get those laws changed and bringing more entrepreneurs into the industry. Now, you referred to the patchwork of laws. So I just want to give just sort of an overview of what it does look like across the nation. So cannabis still remains federally illegal. It's banned under the Controlled Substances Act, which was passed in 1970, and it's classified as a Schedule I substance, so deemed to have high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use federally. However, as most of us are aware, at the state level, there are a wide variety of policies for both medical and recreational use of cannabis, even though that conflicts with federal law. There is an amendment which has been passed which does prohibit the federal prosecution of individuals who work in cannabis and comply with their state medical laws. There is medical cannabis in 33 states, and then recreational cannabis is now currently legal in 11 states, which is, it's nice to be in the double digits in that. And then separate from the adult use and the medical cannabis markets is the CBD market, which most of us are fairly, at least have some familiarity. CBD has been federally legal since 2018 if it's derived from hemp. Hemp is a form of cannabis. It is a separate species though, although it is cannabis, and it's legally defined as cannabis that has less than 0.3% of THC. Now, in addition to hemp that's grown from CBD, there are also hemp that is grown for industrial purposes. Again, same cannabis species, but genetically different. Hemp is a very fast-growing plant, and it has a variety of commercial applications and food applications. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about is all the opportunities that are in the hemp industry. So just to sort of separate the different things we're referring to, medical markets, adult use markets, CBD markets, and hemp, all coming from the same amazing versatile plant. Now, Heather, I'd love to hear from you more about Texas specifically and what our landscape looks like, both now and what might be in the works.
Well, things have been changing pretty rapidly after a long time of nothing changing. And so we have seen, let's talk about medical cannabis. The Compassionate Use Program here in our state was established in 2015. That was the first year that a real medical marijuana bill had even been introduced. Previous to that, there were only bills that would have offered affirmative defense for patients, meaning that if a person uses cannabis medicinally, they get pulled over, they get arrested, they go to court. An affirmative defense would allow the judge to dismiss the charges if they can get a letter from the doctor that says that it's a bona fide medical condition for which they use it. That never actually moved anywhere. It was heard in 2013, but in 2015, we saw a big burst of energy and momentum come into the movement here in Texas. And we saw the introduction of several bills and the passage of one that was very restrictive, but it did lay the foundation for a medical cannabis program in our state. Again, that's the Compassionate Use Program. It's regulated by the Department of Public Safety, and as I mentioned, it is very restrictive. It only allows access for those with certain debilitating medical conditions, and it only allows access to limited dosing. So we'll probably talk a little bit about this, but the cannabis plant is kind of complex. It's made up of different components, one of which is cannabinoids. CBD is one of about 100 different cannabinoids. THC is also another cannabinoid. That's the element of the plant that causes euphoria, and that has traditionally been desirable, I guess, in cannabis consumers. But over the years, there's more research coming out in the different applications of different cannabinoids, CBD being very popular right now. And what this program did was establish access to cannabis with up to 0.5% THC. So as Mary mentioned, hemp and cannabis that's available, low THC cannabis that's available over the counter, can be shipped directly to you, is at 0.3%. And it's not 3%, it is 0.3%. So it is a tiny amount of THC that's available within this plant that is legal. The problem there is that many patients need access to THC to be therapeutic. It is a therapeutic component of the plant. And so the compassionate use program was available for only those with intractable epilepsy in 2015 and 0.5% THC. There were other restrictions and things that needed to be changed. In 2017, nothing passed, very sadly. And 2019, we were successful in expanding the program, not to put Texas on par with the other 33 states, unfortunately, including every state surrounding Texas. I mean, we are behind Oklahoma and Arkansas. There is something wrong with that. We have a lot of work to do, but it is great to see that there are some licensed businesses. There was a statutory requirement that they license at least 3 businesses. Now, they could have issued more licenses, but chose not to. There was a lot of political pressure, as you can imagine, in the rollout of this program. The Department of Public Safety is directly under the purview of the governor, who has wanted to see things really start slowly, and he has ensured that in fact is the case. But we were successful in expanding the program to include terminal cancer, autism, ALS. It includes neurodegenerative disorders as defined by the Department of State Health Services. And they did a great job, and it was really refreshing to be grateful to a government agency for doing something good on cannabis, because they issued a list of neurodegenerative disorders. Over 100 conditions were included. So really good to see that when the medical agency, the Department of State Health Services, got involved, they could see the medical applications of cannabis because they have a medical background. With the Department of Public Safety regulating it, we have some challenges because in this state and for decades in this country, it's a culture of lock them up. You know, you put everybody in jail for cannabis, and now they're having to really change their perspective on this plant and the people that use it and how they treat them. So really, I'm so grateful for the shift that's happening. Again, we have so much work to do on that front, but our medical cannabis program has been established, and we're going to be working to make this program more inclusive, adding patient protections, add physician protections, and make sure that our state has a program that really stands up to what Texas talks about, which is independence, which is liberty, medical freedom, and allowing patients and doctors to be the ones who decide whether or not cannabis can be beneficial to a patient. So that's the medical side of things. Hemp was legalized nationally, as Mary said, in 2018. And while the product would have been legal in Texas, there was no regulatory infrastructure for licensing businesses. And so we saw the passage of the hemp bill in 2019. So we're just up over a year of having this program rolled out. It's regulated by the Department of Agriculture. They license cultivators. And then the Department of State Health Services is regulating consumable hemp products. So 2 things there. One is manufacturing, and the other is the actual consumable products they're regulating. And I do want to note, because it's a challenge that we're trying to overcome and has been kind of kind of interesting how it's playing out. In the law, there was a restriction on manufacturing hemp products for the purpose of smoking. And in their definition of smoking, they use smoking and vaping. So in that policy that was passed by the legislature, it banned in-state manufacturing of these products, which is kind of ridiculous, because what they're saying in the law is that you can grow it here, you have to ship it out of state in order to manufacture it, and then you can ship it back here to sell it. That's what's in the law. Well, the regulators went one step further, and in my opinion, have overstepped their authority in banning the retail sales of these products. Products like pre-rolled hemp cigarettes or vape cartridges, CBD vape cartridges, under current policy cannot be sold in the state. You can order it online, but you can't order it from or you can't go buy it from a local shop here. And I think that eliminates a level of accountability and consumer protection that we need. It also is, it is just ridiculous on its face to have a product that's legal to possess and to use, but you can't purchase it in state. So there was recently a lawsuit filed against that, and I believe that that will be successful in kind of reining in this regulatory agency on that front. In decriminalization, I'll be brief on that because there's not really a market to talk about on that front. But decriminalization, again, a patchwork like Carlos was talking about. Nationally, there's a patchwork of policies. Well, even right here in Texas, we have a patchwork of policies because some localities are declining to prosecute, others are doing diversion programs, and others are maintaining prohibition and going full force in enforcing those policies. So it's difficult to say, you know, what the actual punishment for cannabis possession is in Texas because it depends on where you're at. So we'd like to see those policies changed as well. And then, of course, we can talk later about the adult use market, which has not yet emerged, but repealing prohibition would do that, establishing a legal retail market for adult use. Those are 21 and up who want to responsibly consume cannabis.
Got it. So just to recap a bit of what you said, because I know there's a lot in there and it's kind of hard to pick apart, but we have the Compassionate Use Act, also known as CUP. And initially that was just for intractable epilepsy. And in the last legislative session, they expanded that to include more medical conditions, not as many as other medical states. There's a large list of conditions that would benefit from access to medical cannabis that don't have it in Texas. But another aspect of the Compassionate Use Act program is the amount of THC that's allowed in that cannabis is 0.5%. And then compared to hemp, which we have a fledgling hemp program in Texas, the amount of THC allowed in those products is 0.3%. So very similar, arguably very similar products with very different licensing and regulations even. But so those were the primary things that we're looking at. Now, a little bit more, I wanted to ask you about the current hemp program in Texas. Do you know how many people have licenses and what that sort of landscape of the hemp program is looking like so far?
Well, the Texas Department of Agriculture, or TDA, has issued hundreds of licenses already. In fact, a few months ago, the last time I checked, it was over 400 licenses had been approved and over 1,000 had applied. So Texas farmers were eager to get their license and get involved in this industry. And there have been some hurdles and challenges, and that happens naturally when cannabis or hemp has not been grown here, legally hasn't been grown here in a very, very long time. There is some question about what seeds are going to work best in this climate and getting those certified. The University, Texas A&M University is actually doing research right now on hemp, and that is very exciting to see that institution getting going on that. So there have been hundreds of licenses issued to farmers for cultivation. The manufacturing of hemp products is licensed through the Department of State Health Services, and they just last week opened up the application process for manufacturing and for retail licensing. So I don't have numbers on that because it is so new, but things are progressing, which is exciting to see.
Nice. Now, even with those, hundreds of applicants, it seems, we're thinking about the hemp landscape. Industrial hemp is a really big bucket. We've got, fibers that can be used for textiles, papers, clothing. There's biodegradable plastic options, paint, insulation, biofuel, food for people, food for animals, animal bedding. I mean, there's a soil remediation. I mean, it's sort of this wonderful miracle plant that's highly underutilized. And my understanding is many of these applications that are, while they're possible, are not implemented, as the U.S. in general currently lacks the processing facilities to utilize hemp on a broad scale. So still lots of opportunity in that industrial zone. And from my understanding, most of the Texas farmers are still looking at the CBD market and hoping to grow for that. And then another piece you said that I wanted to also reiterate was the different species of hemp, the different, strains or cultivars or other words that we refer to it as. And there's a wide number of those depending on what the end product is, and also depending on your climate. So we're still kind of figuring out what's best for where and where that end product is going. Okay, so bringing it back a little bit more to real estate, Carlos, I'd like you to just give us an overview of what the different real estate needs are that are specific to cannabis.
Well, Mary, so on a national level, we have retail needs, we have manufacturing needs, obviously agricultural needs. We really, here in Texas, should consider what the market is that we have legal, which hemp, like you said, many people are thinking they're going to be growing for CBD. But in my opinion, and from what I understand, the CBD market is pretty well saturated. If we don't continue on to those other things that you listed, as far as manufacturing products here in Texas, I don't think we're going to have a strong market in CBD, in hemp as we think. There's an ability for Texas to take the lead in these textiles. The main real estate need that we have right now is a manufacturing plant. And if we can get enough Texans involved in the desire to create a manufacturing plant here in Texas, we would dominate nationally for textiles, for hempcrete, for all the various products that you mentioned. Well, I'm working right now on raising an opportunity, a fund to really study the market here in Texas, study the channels of distribution, study how we would be able to create a manufacturing plant here in Texas that would be able to service all those products that you mentioned, because that's really where the opportunity in Texas is right now with the laws the way they are.
So mounting a broad scale feasibility study.
Yeah, we need we're right now working on a feasibility study that would prove the theory that Texas could be the nation's leader in hemp manufacturing, with a proper facility to manufacture hemp, because the CBD market is pretty well saturated right now. And if you don't have someone that you're growing for and someone that you're already selling to before you plant your seeds, I suggest that you hold off until you do, and until the future brings manufacturing through a real estate. I think the community in real estate could come together and really have the power to create that kind of facility here in Texas.
Interesting. So we talked a little bit about the patchwork of laws, not just nationally, but really locally. And so in addition to, whether someone might be looking at retail, whether it's for CBD or potentially a future cannabis market, for manufacturing, which we've been referring to, or for even agriculture, what are some of those considerations for those properties or actions that should be taken to really ensure success?
Well, you have to be really clear on what your local municipality allows for these types of real estate opportunities. So being up to date on how your local community wants to participate in this opportunity is key. But I think the real estate community coming together, especially now in this next legislative session, and really making a strong stance for wanting to plan this in their community. This is what the real estate community is best at, is that innovation of creative real estate that the hemp industry needs right now. So you and your constituents could go on to the state capitol and talk about the economic development of what something like this could mean for Texas. And then beyond that, develop those real estate opportunities that include manufacturing, that include retail, these zones that would be a first of its kind in the country to lead manufacturing in the nation, really.
Yeah, and you know, for anyone who's looking to get involved more on the policy level and get some good guides around that capital, Heather is an excellent resource when it comes to that. Then the other piece that I really hear you saying, in addition to policy work that the real estate community excels at, is the local relationships. And that's something that we've really seen in other states is absolutely key. Your relationships with your local city council, law enforcement, school boards, even, you know, and other elected officials that can really be instrumental. So once you're able to build partnerships locally with people who will not only advocate, but you know, fight for you in terms of policy and licensing, that can really be key to success. Okay, so as we're, you know, a big piece around cannabis and real estate is some of the returns that have been seen, these sort of mythical cap rates, particularly in areas with limited licenses, so not very many people in the, you know, in the market. So as we're thinking of, you know, these sort of dreamlike El Dorado real estate situations in cannabis, let's think about Texas. And Heather, I'd love to get your thoughts on like what would need to happen to make the cannabis real estate market that exciting in Texas?
Well, the bottom line is we need to expand what is legal, what can be sold, what can be produced. And so with our limited medical program now, we have to see that expanded, not only, of course, for the real estate side of things, but also it's the right thing to do. You know, there are people suffering without access to this medicine. You know, so many people have stories just like you, Carlos, where it's a loved one, somebody that they know who benefited from it, and it totally changed their perspective. And Mary was mentioning relationships. All politics is relationships. And so, you know, connecting with lawmakers about whether it's from a professional background as far as you being an entrepreneur and in the real estate space, or helping a loved one or a neighbor share their personal experience to help open up what is accessible to them. So changing the laws is absolutely critical. So, you know, with this medical program, we want to see it expanded, but then looking at the adult use market, and that's where, you know, we see a lot of opportunity also. And it may be a quick transition for Texas. You know, for some states, it takes a long time to get from point A to point B. But it took us so long to get to point A that getting to point B may be a shorter jump, of course, with a lot of work to get there. But that's what would be necessary is getting involved with the legislative process so that we can change these laws. And that's what will open up the space for entrepreneurs who want to make money, provide for their families, and do something good for the people that can benefit from cannabis.
Nice. I also just want to address the opportunity for anyone to put questions in the chat, whether it's about things that they want to hear us talk about or something that we've already touched on. We're happy to respond to those. So just go ahead and put them into the chat. So Carlos, you know, we're picking up from what Heather was talking about as we're looking at what's happened in other states, and we're anticipating and hopefully preparing for high real estate needs. What can we learn from what has happened in other markets?
It's really a great opportunity for real estate brokers to serve their clients and make money at the same time. So, you know, we do have some challenges with the banking laws as far as some properties needing to be financed on a cash basis. So real estate brokers can, if they so desire, go out and find those investors to purchase those properties cash and make commissions that way, and then make commissions also on the sale of the property. So it's very, very lucrative for a broker right now to be able to create these real estate opportunities. You learn quickly that these returns, which are, you know, high teens, low 20s nationally, can be applied here in Texas in a medical or adult use market. So there's a lot of meat on the bone, and it just takes Texans' know-how and willingness to participate to make it happen statewide.
Okay, I'm going to go to some of the questions that we've got. Linda, we're going to get to your question at the end for sure, but this one's from Paul. And Heather, I think you're probably can speak to this. What about convincing legislators about the tax value from cannabis?
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a topic that you have not overlooked in your conversations.
Certainly not. You know, it's with the financial crisis that is impending. We've been dealing with a health crisis in this country and in our state, and there's going to be serious economic ramifications for things that have happened. And our budget shortfall is going to be great. It's going to be a big one, and they're going to have to look at alternative sources of revenue. And while social conservatives have dominated the conversation enough to shut down the prospect and the desire for tax revenue when it comes to the conversation about legalizing for adult use, they're going to have to start considering some alternatives and some options. And we've seen leadership talking lately about it. Now, none of them have said that they're supportive, but the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Burrows, we have the Speaker of the House, and there was the comptroller of Texas, our accountant for the state, all saying that legalization is on the table. They wouldn't support it, but legalization is on the table. And that's fine, because as long as they're talking about it, we're winning. And so that was very encouraging. And so we have to get some economic studies done. That's one thing that I'd really like to see. And I know that some people are working on them. It's kind of expensive to get these kinds of thorough studies done on what the actual revenue generation could be for our state. I do also want to make sure that we're cautious about this, though. We can tax, cannabis into the oblivion and bring in a bunch of money for the state. The problem is, though, that as time goes on, people are going to choose to purchase cannabis from the illegal market because it's less expensive. It's not taxed at all, other than, of course, the cost of doing business in a dangerous illegal market. So we want to make sure that we're not overtaxing cannabis at the prospects of trying to get this revenue generated, because we'll see a thriving black market that, as we know, the drug trade tends to be very violent, and we want to make sure that products are tested, they're labeled properly, and you can really only have that kind of assurance for consumer protection in a legal market. And so we want to make sure we find that balance in Texas. How can we bring in revenue to help fund education or to help fund public health, which is going to be seriously in need of resources after what we're going through right now? But also find that balance to make sure we're not taxing ourselves out of the legal market to where consumers prefer to go to the same guy they've always gotten it from, rather than going to the dispensary because there's 30% taxes, and that's just not the end of it. There's taxes in some states all along the way. The cultivator pays a tax, the manufacturer pays a tax, the retailer pays a tax, and ultimately they're paying it up front, but every business, they pass along that cost of doing business onto the consumer. So we're paying 50% more for cannabis than we would be if we didn't have unreasonable government intrusion in the market, not only with overly burdensome regulations that drive the cost of the product up, but also with taxation.
And, asking you to, maybe call some folks out, where has that happened the worst as a cautionary tale, and what states are potentially doing a better job of not over-regulating and overtaxing a cannabis market? I know there's that delicate balance between you need regulation to maintain testing and a safe product for consumers, but you have to keep it also a something that is affordable for a cannabis consumer.
Sure. Well, I don't know that anybody's gotten it right. I'll say that. I think that I don't think that anybody's gotten it right. I remember the first time that I purchased cannabis was in 2014. I'm in Washington currently, and it was in Washington. It was the first week post-prohibition. I happened to be here, and I went in and I got my stuff, and then I looked at the receipt, and it was like 30 or 35% taxes. It was it blew my mind. But you know, we see in Colorado the tax rates are a little bit lower, and they have been able to drive out the black market by 70%, which is significant. So I think that they're still trying to find their balance. I'm not sure if I even could point to anybody as a best practice. I'm committed to getting Texas on track, to make sure that we're adhering to the limited government values that so many of us talk about, and making sure that we apply that to the regulation of this plant that has never killed a single human in the course of history, rather than over-regulating it like we regulate things that are incredibly dangerous. So we're going to have to find that balance, and I think Texas has the opportunity to really set the bar.
And sort of putting my former life and consumer demographics on, we're talking a lot right now about black market potential and how we're converting, and keeping black market consumers, which basically anyone who consumes cannabis, with a very small exception in Texas right now, is a black market consumer, how we can convert them to a legal market. But there's also the tremendous opportunity of the non-cannabis consumer who has the opportunity to benefit from cannabis, whether it's for medical. And, when we talk about medical, there's a huge range of applications, including things that we wouldn't consider as serious that people are self-medicating with alcohol or maybe prescription drugs. And we can talk about anxiety, and there's eating disorders, and there's PTSD is a really big one that benefits from cannabis. So there's not just the black market conversion, there's the new customer acquisition opportunity, which is, another major part of the market as we move into a legal regulated market. Okay, we have got a question from Pierre, and he is wondering if there's any opportunity for CBD extractions to oil for medical use. So Heather, I'm going to ask you to comment on that one, just really, again, differentiating the difference between the medical cannabis CBD in Texas and then the other CBD market.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so CBD is CBD. It's a molecule within the cannabis plant, and whether it's derived from one type of cannabis or another, it's the same molecule. So keep that in mind as we're talking about hemp or CBD derived from one thing versus another.
But only hemp-derived CBD is the one that someone can go buy today without a license or without a tax.
Well, you could technically buy something that was originally grown from a higher THC plant and then CBD extracted out, and
Okay.
the CBD being shipped here would be legal.
Okay.
Of course, that couldn't be done here. That would have to be done in an adult use state, but those products would be legal here. So it's like all these caveats that make it very confusing for even those who are heavily involved to really fully understand it. And, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about cannabis when I started this job, in 2014. And then you learn about the complexity of the policies in different states and around the country, and then also just the cannabis plant itself. So, so much to learn. So, but back to the question, any opportunity for CBD extraction oil for medical use? So oil is available in the legal over-the-counter hemp market. It is also available in the compassionate use program. The only difference is the level of THC, which is still a trace amount. So oftentimes you'll see a CBD extract. So you can isolate that one molecule and have a product that is a CBD isolate, or you can have a product that is high in CBD, and you'll see people still selling that as CBD oil or as hemp oil, but it has other cannabinoids in it. So both those products are available in both of those programs in Texas right now.
And my understanding is, to clarify, that the compassionate use program, those licenses require a lot of investment and luck, and they are already given, and that's a expensive license to hold. And then for the CBD market, which is more broadly available, it's a highly competitive market, and they're unless you're very well positioned and already have your buyers and your ducks in a row, so to speak, that's a long and competitive road at this moment. So let's talk about, as we're looking at this landscape of opportunities and with this work and with that work, Carlos, I'd like to, ask you, how can folks get ahead of these trends and, these policy motions, and best advise their clients, whether they be investors or entrepreneurs, on how to navigate this market?
Before I answer that, I just want to, that last question on the CBD, there is so much CBD oil being produced right now that I think 60% of production last year was actually didn't have a buyer for and had to be destroyed. So I think the CBD market, just because many factors, is pretty well saturated. So you want to jump ahead to the opportunities, not try to catch up from behind. And I think CBD is well taken care of as far as how much is being manufactured in the country right now. But to catch it, a glimpse of the future and what we can do together in Texas to be able to create an incredible market here is yet to be seen. But it starts with visionaries and then a plan. And just like Heather said, there needs to be money focused and invested in feasibilities for different areas of this market here in Texas. For instance, what I talked about earlier, we are looking for people who are interested in creating Texas as a manufacturing leader in America. So if you want to get ahead of the trend now, and I'd be happy to help you enter this opportunity here in Texas to be able to see what our potential is and how to create the first manufacturing facility really in North America. So that's what I would consider getting ahead of the trend, is thinking of what's next, not trying to catch up to what people have already been doing. So if you're interested, we'd love to talk to you about the opportunities here in Texas to create a vibrant hemp industry.
So what I'm hearing from you is you really need to, one, work backwards, have an understanding of the market, know what the demand is, and already understand who you would be selling your products to. And then the other piece that is really crucial is the strategic partnership. So Carlos, I'd like you to continue with what can, in addition to chatting with you, I know you've helped a lot of folks enter the industry, what can people do now to get involved and start building relationships?
Well, I know CCIM is a national industry, and you probably have other brokers and affiliates across the country that are in legal markets. So I'd reach out to them if you have an interest in learning more about the cannabis industry and what's happening in those states and how they're profiting. And I'm seeing incredible opportunities and deals done by brokers to find facilities and get them licensed and get tenants in there and create, double, triple the rents, and then, sell them at a handsome profit. But if you're focused on Texas, this is a brand new opportunity, and it's if you're a visionary and you have ideas of participating in Texas and this opportunity, we would love to help you. So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll catch you up on what's happening in your area or in your state and how you can participate on a multitude of levels.
Nice. Heather, the same question to you. How can people start to build relationships in the cannabis industry?
Well, normally I say show up, start going to events, but the world has gone crazy. So we're all meeting on Zoom all the time, which actually creates a lot of opportunity, because a lot of these, there are playbacks. I know that today organizers are recording this and they'll probably be available. Organizations are adapting and overcoming and hosting events like there's an upcoming Veterans Conference being hosted in October that will be virtual. We're going to be hosting the 3rd annual Texas Marijuana Policy Conference in November, also a virtual event. So getting involved there. And I can take this opportunity to talk about, or to do a little screen share and share where to find your legislators' information. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Let's do that. Okay, so we are... So actually, first, I just wanted to share the great partners that we're working with. The coalition we have is about 25 different groups: Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy, It's a what I like to call a transpartisan coalition, because this issue really transcends partisan politics. This issue is about people, and we're seeing that personal and professional stories are really helping to advance the cause. So no matter where you land on the political spectrum, there are folks just like you that are involved in this, and conservatives, libertarians, progressives, everyone coming together, which is very exciting. So on our website, texasmarijuanapolicy.org, on the top, there's a toolbar and you'll find legislator voting records. This is an important first step to getting involved, because you want to know where your representatives stand on the issue. How have they voted? Did they co-author a bill in the past? And so what we've done is create this webpage, texasmarijuanapolicy.org/voting records. And what you'll do is you'll enter your information here. And I've already, my control bar came down. Here we go. Okay, so I've already got my information up as an example. So this is my senator, Senator Schwartner, and he has had the opportunity to vote on 2 out of the 3 bills that we're talking about here. So he didn't have a chance to vote on reducing penalties for possession, but he did have the opportunity to vote on legalizing hemp and expanding the compassionate use program. And as you'll see, he co-sponsored both of those bills. And my representative down here, I've got great reps, as it turns out, even though, you know, I've got one Republican and one Democrat, and they're both on board with this stuff. So don't necessarily look at the letter after someone's name, the R or a D, and assume you know where they stand, because there are plenty of Democrats who have stood in our way, and there are plenty of Republicans who are on our team. So don't take it for granted. Go to this website, look at how they voted, where they stood on these policies, and reach out to them. It's very important that professionals in their communities, in their districts, are bringing this issue up. And you don't have to feel a ton of pressure to be an expert on cannabis. Just call and maybe ask for some more information. Once you know about how they voted, you can thank them for supporting it, maybe ask what their opposition was if they didn't support it, and look at it as the beginning of building relationships. I was actually really surprised to see how few people realize the advantage that is to be had by having a relationship with lawmakers and local elected officials. And not in an ugly way, but in a just politics is relationships. The more people you know that have influence, the more information you're going to have and access you're going to have. So build those relationships by just simply reaching out to them and asking questions. And you might be surprised at how forthcoming they are with information. So that's on the website here. I do want to give a little bit of a timeline. You know, our legislative session begins in January. They meet every 2 years. So we're coming up on our big opportunity. 2021 is our big opportunity to change these laws. They meet for 140 days every 2 years. So while the whole political cycle, the 2-year cycle, is a marathon, the sprint portion of this marathon is coming up. And it starts in January. And the more we do now to prepare for it, the better positioned we are going to be to win. And I noticed one of the questions, I hope you don't mind, Mary, about legalization and the timeline for that. So with our legislature meeting every 2 years, we have 21, 23, 25. Those are the next opportunities. And with us, we haven't even decriminalized in Texas. We have a tiny medical program that doesn't even count in the number 33 states that have safe and legal access to cannabis. Texas is not among those. And so we need to bring our state on par with that. And I'm looking forward to 2021 as a big opportunity. I think we're going to see something federally. Carlos was mentioning that before we got on here, is that he thinks it's going to be in the next few years at the federal level. And I tend to agree. And I think Texas will be after that. So will it be 23? Will it be 25? I'm hoping it's not 25. We have got to change these policies. Prohibition has caused so much harm, and there's so much opportunity if we bring this market into the light of day. And so the more work we do, the more relationships we build, the conversations we have, is going to bring that finish line closer. And so I'm grateful to be working with all of you, and I hope that you'll join us in advancing these policies of the legislature.
Thank you, Heather. I know I've always really appreciated you tremendously as an educator, and who is someone who has done so much work across Texas to help people be better informed about this plant, and also be a real advocate for patients and their caregivers, and then also for people who are, arrested and incarcerated for a plant, which, you can very, very easily be sent to jail for a very long time in Texas for possessing. And it's such a contrast to go out into these other states and see a perfectly legal open market that is keeping people out of prison, providing patient relief, and generating tax dollars. So anyone who's interested, I would really encourage you to go check out the resources that Heather offered. Heather, can you type the website into the chat box so it's really easily accessible for folks? Because there's a lot of valuable information there, and many good starting points, just as, beyond an entrepreneur or a business person, just as a citizen who's wanting to learn more. Thanks, Heather. All right, so looks like we don't have any other questions, and we're coming up on our time. Matt, do you have anything else you'd like us to touch on before we're finished?
No, that was awesome, guys. I learned a lot, and that was very well presented. I know, some of the comments have been about how the attendees get in touch with you guys. So I'll get with Ginger, and we can send an email to all the attendees with y'all's bios and contact info. So if anyone wants to reach out to y'all offline, they can do so.
One of the joys of Carlos and I have worked nationally, but one of the joys of being based in Texas is over the past many years, we've had the opportunity to bring folks into the industry. And it's really nice to be here in the sense that we get to see how much opportunity still lies in front of us. So we're happy to be a resource.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. All three of you guys, really, really appreciate it. Very, very well done. Good information. Again, I'll get with Ginger, and we'll make sure everyone has y'all's information. And thank you for everything. And we'll, I'm sure we'll follow and track how things are progressing.
And hopefully we can do another one, after this legislative session, and it'll be a whole new landscape of opportunities to talk about.
Very cool.
All right.
Well, thanks. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And we'll get you guys an email, and be on the lookout for, I think we have a newsletter coming out next week with announcements and future events. So thank you to everyone for taking the time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.